Greetings, YouTube. Greetings, African family. This is Sister Nubia. I'm just coming in this afternoon to talk a little bit about African ancestral beauty and how it relates to our process of re-Africanization, or if you want to call it RBG, whatever, however you want to choose. But I use the word re-Africanization because I think it suits, the values that I embrace in my life personally. Um, I am just coming in this afternoon to speak about this evening, because it's 6 o'clock, to speak about um, African ancestral beauty. In particular, I'm talking to my sisters in the diaspora. And when I say the diaspora, I talk about Canada, where I live, in the province of Quebec. I speak directly to my sisters in the United States, my sisters in India, my sisters in South India, of course, my sisters in Asia, my sisters in Australia, my sisters in South America, Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Uruguay, Guyana, um, my sisters in Central America, and anywhere else that my sisters are, and also, of course, my sisters in the African continent. But the reason why I speak directly to diasporan women is because I think that the reality of embracing and understanding the significance of our ancient ancestral beauty has been lost to us. Our sisters in the continent still have a basic understanding of, and I would say a very good understanding of African ancestral beauty and what it means, particularly in reference to the culture that um, uh, is, according to their ancestral culture, even though, we know that Africa has been colonized, it's not something that they've lost. Um, I know that it's often spoken, I've heard it often spoken that, just because someone's in a nice African shirt or in a dashiki or in something that is representing um, ancestral garments, that does not make that person, um, does not mean that that person adheres to ancient African values, does not mean that that person adheres to Ma'at. However, I still want to maintain that even though it does not mean that that person, I agree completely that it does not make that person more of an honorable person. However, adorning ourselves in the ancient garments of our Nananom Isamafo does uh, represent a part of our culture and does represent the reality of re-Africanization. Um, you know, a lot in, I wouldn't say ancient times, but at least pre-colonial times, and even now, a lot of our ancestral garments represent and are created to teach the values and the cultural norms and the cultural uh, customs, of our Nananom Isamafo, of our nation. So it is not just about wearing fancy African clothes. And the clothes that we wear today, that we claim are African, in many cases are not. That goes for both male and females who wear or, go to African boutiques to buy clothes. Many of these clothes that we're wearing are actually not African. They're made in Asia. They're made in India and Indonesia, even though we know that we have African family in those parts of the world. When we speak about ancestral garments, we have to be very specific and state that even if it is made in Asia or it is made in India, it should be made directly by our African people there, you know. However, we know that is in many cases not the case. Much of the African clothing that is sold, you have Holland wax, which is made in Holland, which I know that many women in West Africa prefer that wax rather than the word GTP, which is Ghana textile printing. I do not wear those, even though I've been giving some of them as gifts. I have given them away, and I'm selling a few right now. So I do not, I make it responsibility not to wear African, well, I wouldn't really say African clothing. I would call it exotic clothing made in Europe and made at the hands of Asians and, European Indians, Brahmins. Basically, I wanted to just give that clarity. We speak about dashikis and, prints, exotic prints on African clothing. These are not necessarily the African ancestral garments that I speak of. When I speak of African ancestral garments, I speak of adire, I speak of kente, I speak of ashoke, I speak of batik, I speak of different bokolafini, and most of these ancestral garments, as I said, are created and made by our were made by our Nana Musamafar and are still made in parts of Africa today to teach us about the values and principles and cultural norms that are part of our civilization and are part of our identity and are part of our destiny and purpose. So I also hear a lot of talk about, you know, separating ourselves from, the cultural ways of Europe and Arabs and so on. But I don't want to judge, and I don't want to sound as if I'm trying to judge. But um, I don't see how that's going to be done if we continue to choose to emulate the styles and cultural practices of Europeans and of people who are not African. Um, so whether consider yourself RBG, red, black, and green, you're, Fahodie, pumping your fist, you're a baby Fahodie, re-Africanization, whatever terminology that we wish to use in reference to ourselves as African people has to be backed up by actions and by proper conduct and by adhering to ancestral values and principles and adhering to our laws, the laws that have been laid down by our Nana Misamafo that are still accessible to us, the laws of Ma'at, the Oduifa. Um, it's important for us to remember that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already there. We just have to remember that it's there and reclaim it. So, I realize that there needs to be a more distinct separation between women, particularly, African women. I'm not separating here African women, the diaspora on the continents, and European women, because we do not share the same genetic phenotype. We do not share the same culture. We do not share the same practices. And, this thing of we're all women, um, I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Um, it is distinguishable factor is one thing that we can call fashion. However, the word fashion, I would say, comes from um, the machinery of Yoruba domination, because Yurugu likes to use these words to say that it's fashion and it's style and whatever, and it has nothing to do with, who you really are or your identity. But I don't use the word fashion. I use the word ancestral garments, because the ancestral garments is what teaches me to remember who I am and also helps me to revive that goddess energy within me and make it something that is applicable to me today. Not only goddess, queen mother, queen mother of civilization. When we adorn ourselves within that consciousness, we become that. You know, it's not only a matter of saying the words, but